In the 17th century, an inspiring host gathered people together, the purpose to increase their knowledge through conversation. These gatherings were called salons. Guests would debate a topic for the evening, mostly books, then eat and drink tea. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the high tea with the VC. Can you believe it? The first one for the second semester. It's good to see all of you here today. Some familiar faces and new faces. I also wish to take this opportunity to welcome those that are joining us virtually. We can't do this without your support, and we do not take it for granted. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be discussing a book with the title, The Way Home, Memories of a South African in Exile. It looks like this. You can see mine. This book has been all over the world, you know. I've been reading it, putting it down, and just picturing the author, Professor Morley Nkosi, and reading and closing my eyes and laughing and sometimes crying, I must say. You know, this is how much I enjoyed the book. Our author today is Professor Morley Nkosi, as I've indicated, author of the book, published by the great University of Johannesburg Press, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what that means. It means that copies are available for sale. And those who prefer to have an e-book, of course, you know how we do things at the great University of Johannesburg. University of Johannesburg Press, we publish hard copies, but we also have open access books that you can download and read at your leisure. So please remember that. And I'm sure Prof will have a minute or two to autograph the book should you acquire a hard copy. I brought my own hard copy. Prof Nkosi, of course, is a retired professor, a South African-born, US-trained, retired professor of economics, and one of the founding members of the PAC, Pan-Africanist Congress. I hope I'm not giving you this title. We can talk about it later. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm round of an applause to welcome Professor Nkosi at the great University of Johannesburg. Welcome, Prof. Finally, here we are.
Can one speak Zulu, Sesotho?
Yes, please.
And Afrikaans and English?
Yes, please.
By a donkey.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
yes,
do you
Prof.
want me to start or would you start?
You may start, Prof.
I really have to thank Vice-Chancellor Mpedi for the opportunity to come here and have a little chat with all of you, those who are here and those who are looking at this from distances. When you've traveled the journey that I have traveled, you learn a lot. NgesiZulu kuthiwa ukuhamba ukubona, translated into if you travel, you see, meaning you learn. I have traveled quite extensively in the continent. I've traveled in parts of Europe, but I've traveled even more in the United States. There are a lot of things I would like to share with you. But the book, I think, tells a detailed story. If you've had the opportunity of reading the book, you will then be able to ask me pertinent questions that resonate with what you would like to hear from somebody who's been around for as long as I have. I won't tell you how old I am. I'll leave that to your minds as you calculate. If I left here in 1960 at the age of 25, how old am I now? Now, year will not require high mathematics. It just requires additions, okay? Bayasu, thanks for the opportunity and the time you've taken to come and have a conversation, because there's so much to talk about that, I will wait for you to ask me the questions and then I can answer them to the best of my ability. But I'll start with the last thing I had in mind to say to you. As you sit here, all of you, please remember you are an important investment in this country. It starts with your family, it goes to your community, it goes to your province, it goes to the country, and finally, the world is changing so rapidly that you have to find this country and yourselves a place in a very fast changing environment. So it's nice to see you here, and I hope we have a very, very productive discussion. Do not feel hesitant in asking any question. Okay, I'm here to offload.
I mean, the book is voluminous, Prof. So we're not going to go through it, paragraph by paragraph, so that these young and fine minds and colleagues can read this themselves, But I read the book, and I was asking myself, what are the key takeaways, for me? There's a lot, but I singled out 6, and I also want us to talk a little bit about that, in a way that can inspire this the young generation, the current generation. One of them, reading the book, Prof, is about perseverance and resilience. From early on, I picked that, this is something that you thrived on, never accepting no for an answer. The section where there was a truck that was put there, and you couldn't reach the pedals. Those who were watching were thinking, no, this is it. But you made a plan there and then and got a job. And today, I'm mentioning this because today there's a tendency of giving up easily. And another part in the book, where many of us would have given up was when you went to Park Station and the place was overflowing with the police. And a thought, across your mind that, no, you should run to the next train station. I mean, many would have given up, but you ran until an uncle you knew saw you jogging there and gave you a lift, and this is how you managed to escape the apartheid police. What would be, let's talk a little bit about the two, and then also share with us, how can we make sure that this tendency of giving up easily today, people just raise their hands and say it's difficult and they give up. How can we instill that sense of, always push yourself? And that's how one succeeds, and that's how we realize our goals in life.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. Let me start with the incident that led to the truck driving. Langlaagte is not very far from here.
Yes.
It was then a place where you got your driver's license. I had just been given a driver's license to drive trucks and buses. Don't ask me why I went that way. And I'm in cloud 9 walking down to Breeze Street, and suddenly I hear this gunshot. And when I go and look, I find that an African was shot by a white man because they were contesting the parking spot. The parking spot really should have been taken by the truck driver. He had marked it, he was delivering stuff, but because he was black, the white guy decided he must move. He wasn't going to move, so he got shot. So here am I carrying a public service driver's license. I see this, and I see them dragging this man, putting them next to the wall, and I look at the truck that he's driving. I realize he won't be able to drive that truck again. So next morning, I won't go into the details, or what did I tell them at home. Next morning, I went to the company that owns the truck. And it was the largest, shop front fitting company in South Africa at that time. It had come here after doing work in the House of Commons in England and set up a branch in Cape Town in 1902. So I stood there and I said to this venerable, nice old man, Baba ngicela umsebenzi. Father, I'm asking for work. He says, what kind of work? I says, your driver was shot yesterday. He says, how do you know? I saw it. And you are a truck driver? I got my license yesterday. I can drive the truck. He says, and then I says, listen, I'll drive the truck when he has healed. He can come back and take his job. So he walks away, comes back with an induna spear. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, Mfana, Funan. Mfana wants a job, and he wants to drive the truck. So he says, you can drive a truck? I say, yeah. So come up. I walk in, there are 3 trucks, that big truck that I saw the previous day, and 2 smaller ones. And they are nice, big guys who are driving these trucks. If you looked at them, you realize that one of them should be driving this big truck, but they said they didn't want to drive the big truck. I should drive the big truck. So there's a Jewish word called chutzpah. So the guts. I decide I'm going to get into this car. They give me the key, try it. I get into the car, I can't reach the pedals. I'm glad you were not there then, because it wasn't a laughing matter. And I try to lean back, it's too far. I'm just sitting there exactly like this, and I can't drive this car. And I'm looking around, I see waste cloth that used to be used to clean engines. And I see some empty bags. I grab 2 empty bags, stuff them up. Everybody is watching, because they didn't know what was going to happen. I take both bags, take one bag, put it behind me, and I take the other one, I sit on it, and I can reach the pedals. And I don't have to go back. I start the car. And they were stunned. I drove around, this is Village Main now, around Village Main and Van Berg. I come back, they couldn't believe it. That's how I got the job, of driving the truck, long distances from Johannesburg to Durban, Johannesburg to Bloemfontein often. Now, the other story had to do with the Park Station. Being a truck driver was an attempt on my part to get more money coming into my pocket and my family, At that time, when you worked, your pay was not your pay, it was the family's pay. You came back home, you said, this is what I have earned. And then Ubaba no Mama will decide what you get and so on. No problem. That's how we were brought up. Now, the frustration was that in this truck driving job, I suddenly am promoted to be assistant manager. A white man is kicked out, I'm put in there. It's a difficult place, 200 or so Africans, an equal number of Europeans. The racism, unbelievable. So I'll cut the story short because I did so well there. There's a big building that used to be the JSC on Diagonal Street. I counted every section of bronze and steel that built that thing as an assistant manager. I did so well that I went to the head of the company and I said, I think I've done well enough now. Can I be promoted? He says, into what, Morley? I says, I want to be a draftsman. He says, you walk into that office and I lose 44 white draftsmen. Then I said, Mr. Robinson, thank you very much. Bye. I left. The consciousness of being put into those positions led me to be a member of the PAC. I met Sobukwe and others and so on. We founded the PAC branch in George Goch, which was Eastern Native Township. Now, fast track, very, very quickly. Being the secretary of that branch meant I did a lot of organizing. The upshot of that is that it got me into serious trouble because one day I find myself in my brother's house reluctantly because my sister had said to me I should go there. I had met her accidentally at Park Station and told her I was leaving for Nyasaland, Malawi, as a delegate of the Malawi Congress Party. Now, when I drop these names, I mean, they should mean something to you. You know, here's a little African who is already clued up to Malawi politics, Rhodesian politics, Zambian politics, and so on. We didn't just sit here and think this is the beginning and the end of it, particularly when we were resisting. So the long and the short of it is, my brother doesn't tell me the night I sleep in his house that he has reports of every organization that was resisting apartheid, ANC, PAC, Unity Movement, South African, the Rhodesian National Congress, and so on. It wasn't called that. You can check it in the book. When these Afrikaner policemen at 5 o'clock in the morning in White City picked the stuff up, they were so happy. They say, "Where's the bastard?" Me. Why are they saying that? Because I ran over to see what were they happy about, and I see my handwriting and typewritten versions of it. Then I realized the lady who had done the typing the day before, I was 3 minutes late, she had left, she gave it to my brother forgot to tell me that in this house there's incriminating evidence. Tata maphepha kuhambe, because I would have left. So the police picked that up, and I realized this was the end. That was September 9th, 1960. I ran around, told all the comrades whose names were in there that, listen, the police are coming, I'm off. I get to Park Station with a very good friend of mine who had fixed me fake papers. I was now a minor. I'm going to get into a train that takes minors from Johannesburg back to Malawi, Nyasaland. When we get to Park Station, the whole station is surrounded by police and security people, the front side and the back side. And I know that this train leaves around 3:15 or so, and it stops in Mayfair. So I says to this friend of mine, Kulisewa, I think we better run. He says, run where to? Mayfair. He says, how the hell do you run faster than a train? I said, hey, listen, there's no choice. We run. Now, this is what the VC is talking about. I had no inclination that we would suddenly run into Mr. Sport. That was Dan Twala, who was managing Bantu Sports on Van Velach Street. He's a relative, and he says, where the hell are you going to? He says, oh, we're seeing somebody off in Mayfair. Long and short of it, that's how I got the train. Now, to come back to my own drivers, I had a chance to think, what is it that really drove me to do all these things? The book really is worth reading because I am not the only person who's gone through that experience. It could have been any one of you, okay? But what you must understand is that there is a purpose in life. Umuvuka ekseni, the question is, uyokwenzani namhlanje? Okay? That was always clear to me, but I didn't do it on my own. I did it because my parents really brought me up that way. So the driver on my part, VC, was purpose. The second was discipline, where the mind, as well as the morality, is such that you become a policeman on your own. After that, you decide, no, you know what? I have to work hard. You have a purpose, you have discipline, you work hard, you learn a lot of things as the day passes, each day. You don't just wander in and out of, even here. After a lecture, you ask yourself, namhlanje ngifundeni, kanjani, and so on. And if you haven't covered that, go back and ask the people who know, what is it that I have missed? Then, in addition to that, is that you have to really be consistent in keeping up these drivers that I've just talked about. At the end of the day, okay, you will say, I've done well, my family has done well, I can contribute something to my community. I go back to where I started. What is it that I can do for my country? And Bahesu, I'm saying this deliberately because at my age, seeing what some of us fought for, okay, and seeing where the country is going to, my hope is this. if you guys are serious. Overcoming obstacles is going to be a daily bread. Don't be afraid of that. That's it.
Thank you very much. A warm round of an applause. So, ladies and gentlemen, one, you can't make an appointment with an opportunity. Opportunities are everywhere. Number two, don't give up. We give up when we're dead. Prof, let's take it one step back. Sharpeville massacre happens. Leaders are arrested. You survived by grace of God, you know. I mean, the way it started with you confronting the commander of the police station and leaving and coming back, people are gone. And you see this fellow in the woods and everybody's been arrested except you. But fast track it a little bit. These two fellows, especially, I don't want to mention names, they must read the book. The fellow that when you went to pick him up for the march was hiding in the house, rocking up in Lesotho, with another person, taking the money that the president of Ghana sent out to support PAC and throwing a lavish party with lots of alcohol. When I read this, I say, damn, the more things changes, the more things stay the same. True. So my question is, how can we relate those challenges then and today's challenges that we're seeing, and how can we deal with those? Because at the end of the day, it's people who go out in the name of the people to solicit opportunities that end up in, if it's resources, money, it ends up in their pocket, or those of family and friends. If there are opportunities, if you are not connected, forget it. How do we deal with this? And you rightly pointed out that the future is here.
This is the future.
Indeed. And one of my colleagues always says, VC, mark my words, the future of this country will be in the hands of people who were connected, studied or were connected with UJ in one way or another. And I believe him. And you repeated that also today, although you didn't say UJ, but this is UJ. So over to you, Prof.
Well, no, I think, I will say UJ because I've watched the transformation taking place in UJ. Wonderful. I've watched other universities try to transform. I'm even very suspicious now when somebody uses the term transformation. What does he mean or what does she mean? Let's leave that alone.
Okay.
Let me go back to March 21st, 1960. The commander of the police station decides to take the national leadership, distributes them into individual VWs, the Beatles, and asks the police to go to their homes to find out what is it that they can get there. A stupid thing, because we had made the announcement days earlier that on March 21st, we are going to be storming, not even storming, descending on all the police stations across the country. So they leave. Now, in the region, I was at that stage vice president because the president of the region had been killed in prison. No, that's before. He was a former leader in the ANC. They took him also on a car. Now, they took the president of the PAC in the Witwatersrand region with them, and I was left as vice president. Now, the discipline of our organization was that Abakokeli leaders must stand front, not hide in the back. So we're standing there in twos, and the commander comes out, V as the layer, and I say that deliberately in Afrikaans because from then on, my conversation with the station commander was in Afrikaans. I didn't really mention that in the book. So we get into the police station. On his desk are piles of paper, smelling from the cyclo-style. They had just done an overnight job to ask questions. What is your name? Where do you live? What's your address? And so on. All of that we conduct in Afrikaans. And then the question is, what do I want at the police station? And I say in Afrikaans, I said, no, Pasni, you must now arrest me. He says, no, I won't arrest you. I says, but what should I do? You go to Braamfontein, and they will fine you a certain amount of money. I says, you go to Braamfontein. Well, if that's not the case, in 2 weeks' time or after a period has elapsed, you're going to be fined more. I says, I am not going to go. He got so agitated that he says, Kekiso, stop it, walk out. That's how I walked out. When I get out, obviously the people who were waiting to be interviewed next were all anxious about what had happened. I didn't really have time to tell them the whole story because he was there waiting for the next person to come. So off I went. Where do I go? I go to, you see this Maponya, the old man? He then had a little shop. I mean, it was from here to here, square. He had been chosen as one of those people who would distribute food to all the people who would be arrested. I didn't know Maponya, so I walked in and I looked at him and I says, you are the guy who's going to, yes, where's the food coming from? It's coming from Cape Town. Who's giving it to you? The Liberal Party. Oh, and this is all there is. What are you distributing it? So I left him there, went back to see who else had been released like I was. When I got nearer the police station, there was nobody. And it was really an eerie feeling. And then suddenly, one of our most trusted courier, Nobuntu, jumps out behind the trees and says to me, Usobuke says, whatever you do, do not get arrested. You're the only one left. Then I knew I was on my own, okay? And that's how it happened. Now, this, I am not as diplomatic as you are, Vice-Chancellor. Andrew Tesane, on the night before we landed, or before we got to the police station, we were collecting people on our way. We were getting close to his house. His wife kept saying, it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, and this lady is leaning over the windowsill. What's about Ratla? Here's what it said. Uputlako, the Secretary General of the PEC, says, no, Andrew is underneath the bed. So we get to the house, he says, tell Andrew, we're picking him up now, we're going to the police station. No, Ndate, hayo. And we all cracked up. So the younger ones say, Mulala Ramona utasabete. Tell him we see him is underneath the bed. Okay. So Andrew got away that way. Now, sometime in March, suddenly we get news that Nkrumah had sent A.K. Barton with some money to the PAC. Now, don't be surprised by that, because the Congress Party, Bonsu Mokgeke le Bokgakela, were very close to Sobukwe and us because of the Pan-Africanist ideology. Please remember, if you do not have that inclination, this continent is going nowhere. After the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, we are in this remorse because people chopped this country and were left with 54 different countries. We didn't cut them up. They were cut up by other people. Anyway, the long and the short of it, Nkrumah sends this money, and Kgaketla and Nsu Mokgeke, the chairman of BCP, I don't know how it happened. Andrew Tesane got out of underneath the bed, found his way to Lesotho with another old veteran of the ANC. And when they get there, how they knew that somebody had money for the PAC, I have no idea. They are asked by the leaders of the BCP, is there nobody else left? They says, no, there's nobody else but us. They took a pile of money. that was desperately needed in the organization. And Badi Tabeng Puting. So we show up the next day, myself and Eddie Makoti, who was my treasurer. We knew Kaketla and Sue very well, because whenever they passed through Johannesburg onto their way to Accra for Nkrumah's conferences, okay, they would stop and ask us what the latest was and so on. So when they saw us, they were shocked. They said, but we thought you guys were already in prison. We said, no, we're here. Send somebody to Puting. Bring that. Oskaba bolella hore Nkosi le Makoti are here. Don't tell them Nkosi and Makoti are here. So they brought them. We were in a room. When they walked in, this man who hid under the bed, Helen, I forget her last name now, Molapo, couldn't believe it. And Ntu and Kaketla asked them, do you know these two people? Yes, we know them. Who are they? Gave the names. What positions do they occupy in the PEC? He's vice president, he's treasurer. Yesterday, when you took the money, you said there was nobody left. Take that money, give it to them. No, we'll give it to them. We never saw the money. I mentioned that because that was the first time I began to realize how vulnerable liberation organizations are when it comes to money. Okay? And at the end, when I left the PAC, I left the PAC because I saw a suitcase full of all sorts of money, okay, being handled by a very important representative of the PAC in London, who wanted me to be an accomplice. And he says, let's go to the counter. I says, count what? You counted the money. You sign the slip to deposit the money. You know, in between there are other stories. You know. Now, if you're not disciplined and you have no morality, you'll take other people's things, including their lifelines. In places where our people were starving. That is the end of the story. I think I've touched on the issues that you've raised. Yes. Now, in those, these are not just stories by Jesus, okay? They indicate some behavioral problems that we still have. Look at the issue of being dishonest with money. What has it done to our country now? Okay? If you are not disciplined, you are not honest enough, there's no purpose in life, you will be a taker. And look at the investment that you have made to be a taker.
Wow. Prof, in the book, you mention an instance where just before the national leadership elections, where your name was put forward as somebody that could be considered to be a member of the National Executive Committee, and Sobuk was saying, no, you are not ready. Now, when I read your book, the humility that you accepted, the fact that you were not ready, you know, it's incredible. Today, we see people who are simply wet behind their ears, and when they're told, wait your turn, people get so worked up and so on. So the question that I wanted to ask you is, I mean, what does it mean to wait your turn in leadership or opportunity? And what is it that we can learn from that experience? The importance of being patient, to wait for one's turn or opportunity, even in life. For some of the challenges we're seeing, people are occupying positions that they are not ready for. And they collapse institutions, roads are not built, and so on.
That's a very difficult question, but not difficult in terms of my own experiences. You have to be honest with yourself And I'm not just throwing that out. You remember I started with the purpose. I went on to discipline. I went on to hard work. I went into consistency and all those things, and also the value of your education. If you keep some of those drivers in mind, you'll be honest with yourself if and when an opportunity comes up and somebody says, like Zuma said to this poor guy who was Minister of Finance for a few days, I want you to be Minister of Finance. He took it. Engazi nokwazi ukuthi what is it about? It's not vulnerability, it's stupidity, but it's also because ucabanga ukuthi isikhundla sinemali, the position has money. You have to really be grounded in the kind of drivers that I mentioned to be able to differentiate when you are fit for a position and not. Now, in the PAC thing, I just looked at it and I said, no, I really can't be on the national executive. Largely because there were people like, there was an incredible man who was an organizer of the PAC in Alexandra, Josiah Matsunya. Josiah Matsunya should have been on the national executive. He wasn't. And I am being asked to be on the national executive. Doesn't make sense. That man is older than me. He has more experience than me. He's respected in Alexandra, and he can bring a lot to the party. I'm young, no experience, no constituency, except maybe a few people in the Eastern Native Township and other places. Anyway, Sobukwe probably went through similar thinking when he said, no, I don't want him on the national executive. Let him serve on the regional executive. And of course, on the regional executive, he was very right. There were two regional executives. The first one, I was just a member. It collapsed because abantu being sebenza nabo, very respectable elderly men who were from the ANC Youth League, thought that because they were leaders and came from the ANC Youth League, they didn't have to go around organizing. I went around organizing. So when we were fired as the first regional executive committee and brought back for elections, I was the only one who survived. Now, but the terrible thing about it is that when we were given time, it happened all in one day, in a matter of 2-3 hours. We were fired in 1 hour and we were told in an hour or two, come back. That hour was very difficult for me because these elderly men are trying to say I should tell the whole conference that they worked hard in organizing. And I'm saying to them, but you guys never showed up at this place, at this place, at this place. No. They wanted me to be the fall guy and convince the conference that we were stopped and told it's time to come back. When I got to the platform, I talked about what I knew I had done. Finish. And the rest of them were fired. Now, in that second regional executive committee, I still felt, Umadzunya manje, that man would have been excellent to be in this regional executive committee. But that was my problem. So that is as much, I hope I've addressed your question.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. 2 points. One, in Setswana, riri mutu ki mutu kabatu. And when I look at your journey, and strangers and friends and people that you encountered along the way that supported you, it's just incredible. And what pains me today, it looks like in some ways we're losing that, You crossed into Botswana, you crossed into South Rhodesia, and there were people who said it's not safe here, here's money, go to this place.
Yeah.
You crossed to Nyasaland, now Malawi, there were people who guided you. You went to prison and to visit, and they said, oh, you made a big mistake. First thing in the morning, please go to this place. Then Kenya, then Egypt, all the way people opening their doors, London, you name it, the US. And today, rightly or wrongly, we seem to be losing that and forgetting. We see how sometimes unfairly people are treated who come from other African countries. This is the first point. The other point, Prof, connected to this, my mother always told us, and I'm now paraphrasing, that when you are wet, standing in the rain, you don't wet yourself because you are already wet. I hope I make sense. So you are in a terrible situation. You've got only clothes on your back, but you don't relax and say, I'm a refugee, this is all I've got. You would wash your clothes, iron them, and show up looking nice and clean. But at the same time, you had that line that you say, this is not the line that I'm going to cross, irrespective of my situation. People serve you some food with worms, you would say, this is where I draw the line. You did it twice, even before you left South Africa in prison, dirty prison marks, you said, actually, I don't feel like eating. But in Egypt, you said, look, when you're hungry, you cannot be discerning. So packaging all that, first, umuntu, the saying in Zulu, how do we bring that back? And the other point is the importance of when you are wet and in the rain, you don't wet yourself because you are already wet. And I'm saying this because we've got young people going through difficult times who may say, no, my life is a mess. But it doesn't mean one should not show up. Exactly. It doesn't mean one should not brush one's teeth. I'm not saying people don't brush their teeth, but showing up and looking nice and so on. Because today people will still blame apartheid. Of course, apartheid had its, it messed up a lot. But the importance of showing up, I hope it makes sense.
No, you do. And it's a tall order. There are a number of things that go through my mind. Eyokala, the first one, is that these truisms that he and I have been mentioning, mutu ke mutu kabatu babang, okay? Umuntu ngabanye abantu. They sound very superficial, but if you delve deeper, you will begin to recognize what they mean. He has delved deeper. When you think that I leave South Africa, I knew nobody in Botswana, nobody in Southern Rhodesia, nobody in Nyasaland, nobody in Tanganyika, nobody in Kenya, nobody in the United Arab Republic, which is now called Egypt. I didn't know anybody. But strangers took me in, fed me, gave me money. I mean, it's just amazing. You begin to realize, ukuthi ngempela umuntu ngabanye abantu. And for me, when I see now our own people hounding their own people and calling them foreigners, makwere and whatnot, think of how far that is from Pan-Africanism and this saying that we are talking about. If you treat your own people like that, uzophelelaphi. Okay? It doesn't matter who you are. Respect other people. Doesn't matter what their color is and so on. Ubuntu becomes another one. Okay? So the truisms really, don't just look at them superficially, think deeply about them and apply them in your lives. Manje ukusokola the circle. Okay? Sonke siphuma la. Okay? Imagine traveling all these countries for 2 years. All right? In fact, before I got to London, all I had was what I was wearing. And because I came from a place where sasikwazi uwasha nokuayina ekhaya ngangumsisi umama, you would not catch me smelling filthy, whatnot. Every night, if something has to be washed, it's washed. Next morning, it's ironed, and I look like I'm normal. As abnormal as my situation was, I never gave up, okay? Then furthermore, when you look at the extent to which there comes a time when you have to draw the line. One, indaba yase Marshall Square, which is at the corner of Marshall Street and I think, is it West Street? There used to be a building there, the biggest police station in South Africa, Marshall Square. Yeah. Umbangibanjwa lapho for a pass that expired a day earlier. We are all thrown in. They are not asking you at the desk what were you arrested. You're just taken, thrown in to a cell with a number of other people. And you are suddenly told, listen, your pass will be fixed and all right if you accept the job that we're giving you. And you can't ask this detective, white detective, what kind of a job? And then they throw in a bag, a dirty bag full of brown bread and those old milk containers, the heavy ones, full of coffee. So you look at the bread, you look at the coffee, I'm not touching that, okay? Then some poor old man comes and eats and says, "Mtanam, when I was looking at it, no, I'm from Oh, what are you doing here? It's no Mboshi. That man had no fingernails from digging potatoes in Bethel, Gezandla. He had done 1 or 2 stints of it. His pass was never fixed. And he says to me, Uma befigala and offer you the job, don't take it. I drew the line. There were only 2 of us who didn't take that job. We ended up somewhere in Braamfontein, late at night, paying 10 rands a piece to be released. But those who went to Bethel, who knows whether they ever returned from digging potatoes with their bare hands, okay? Now, on the Ilala, from Chipoka to Mbeya in Nyasaland, this boat has 3 levels, natives and cattle, level number 1. Level number 2, if you can afford it. Level number 3, higher up, okay? On that boat, I didn't have anything to eat. So the poor guys who ran the boat would make their porridge, that I identified, and then they'd make this stew that was dark, teeming with worms that were alive, you know. And so I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't know where my next meal will be. I drew the line. I won't touch the floating, creepy, crawly worms. I'll just take the soup as if there's a difference. So I would fold the little pap and dip into the soup where the creepy crawly germs were. And I survived. So you draw the line somewhere, but in some cases it doesn't make sense.
Please, it's your opportunity now to engage with Prof. You know, I can go on and on. I really enjoyed this. While you are raising your hands, Prof, the importance of taking advice. In Egypt, you are having a serious allergic reaction. You are on your way, you want to go to the hospital, and the receptionist says, "Where are you going?" "No, go back to your room. Do you have £1 or what was the amount?
£1.
£1, go back to your room." And there are many other examples, just we don't have time. The importance of taking advice. This is something that I'm mentioning this because this is something that we're struggling with today. People don't take advice anymore. We know it. "Hey, you are not my father. You cannot tell me anything." You want to be a fighter jet pilot, and then somebody says no.
No.
And then you make peace with it.
Yeah. Well, two instances. I think, you know what, maybe let's let people ask questions. Buzani,
Okay.
let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I answer now?
Yes, please.
No.
Okay.
First, I said this is the investment of your home, your community, your province, and the country. Okay? Now, and that you have to have a purpose in life. Okay? That is something that you begin to clarify in this journey, Yausa Skolo. Okay? To prematurely decide you is not a good idea. You should interrogate yourself, why am I tempted to want to be a leader? You know, what will I be leading? What do I take to that leadership? Why am I prompted to go that way? You ground yourself first in terms of, I have been educated, I think I know, but I don't know it all, and I am growing, and this is the direction in which I want to grow, okay? In the book, you'll notice that even when I got to the United States, I maneuvered my way into what I ultimately became, okay? Even against the odds, you have to do that, but you can't maneuver on nothing. That is a long story, but I would say that if you ever get a copy of a book called Black Workers, White Supervisors, that came out of my dissertation to get the doctorate in 1984. It's an academic book, but there's no book in this country that outlines this phenomena of black workers and white supervisors, to the point where some of the publishers here did not want to touch it. Okay, that's why it was published overseas. Now, I used that in order to write the next book. I noticed that, no, you can't really write a successful book like this one using academic language and parlance. The adjustment took help from other people, you know, the editors, my son-in-law, my partner, life partner, who's a social historian, and so on. You give them the work and they tell you, no, wafo samo, shape it this way and whatnot. Keep in mind who is going to be reading this book. It's not another academic, it's ordinary people. So you will see this book is readable. The next one that I'm working on, the sequel, that talks about my life since I came back here until now, another 30-something years, is even more readable because I learned from the dissertation, the change of language into a book like this one, and now I've improved further. I didn't do it alone. The first challenge was that a lot of my compatriots, people my age, had passed on. So, you know, I had to really rely on my memory and the few relatives and people who really knew what I was doing. But then, luckily, the internet is very helpful. In cases where I had doubts about some of the people, particularly those that I met in the United States, I would check the internet to see whether it's helpful or not. I really didn't keep copious notes until I got to the United States. From here to London, it was just small address books where I had people's names and addresses and so on. There was a serious challenge in making sure that I do not write my own fiction, okay, of the imagination. You know, Vice-Chancellor, she's naughty. She reminds me of, I had a conversation this morning with Barbara Masekela, and she called, and she says to me, oh, but Morley, you know, I'm sorry I won't be able to attend the Vice-Chancellor high tea. I says, no problem, because you know. He says to me, you know what you're doing is very good. I said, why, Barbara? He says, the other day, this is for you, the other day, somebody who drives her often looks at her and says to her, I'm jealous, is Barbara, tell me. Badlani abantu lapha phesheya. What do people eat out there in exile? I mean, and then he went on to say, are they also driving ingola ezifana nalezi? You know, guys, don't laugh. He was... No, really, because the story in itself indicates, one, this man was brave enough to be open about what he didn't know, okay? And he figured that asking somebody who has traveled abroad will explain what people eat there and what kind of cars do they drive. It may be funny for us because we know from TV or from traveling that, you know, it's the same. But for him, it isn't. There are a lot of people who are trapped in that level of ignorance where abaz uguti kwenziwan. Now, to answer your question, literature and this kind of storytelling is very important. We were laughing before we started with the Vice-Chancellor when I said, you know, I feel like there's a big, no, I think it was Reneka. I was talking to, I said, it feels like there should be a big tree here, okay? And all you guys sitting around, and I'll be leaning against the trunk, you know, and just pontificating about what I know, what I think you should do, and so on. In a way, we are emulating that, but in a modern sense. The extent to which UJ himself and the previous Vice-Chancellor have indicated the importance of this kind of forum, this kind of storytelling is a commitment, okay? There are a few of us who are left who really, I'm not the only one, who have a lot of stories to tell. Some of them really can even pontificate more specifically about the importance of literature. Lo Barbara Masekela's Kulumangai is working with UJ right now on something that has to do with literature. You see, the literature is ibhalo zethu. What is it that we have written about ourselves over all these years, okay? So the literature and the storytelling of any form becomes extremely important, because that's how, I mean, in this forum, I've said a lot of things that I'm hoping resonate with you young people. I mean, I never had the opportunity that you guys have. Ukuza a university. Gizofunda. I couldn't. My parents didn't have the money. And Wits would not allow me even if I did have the money. Not in 1960. Or earlier than that. It was 1950 something when I finished at Kilnerton High School. Okay. You guys have it made. Recognize that, this is just the beginning. There's much, much more you can do, especially if you're fortunate enough to live as long as I've lived. Please respect yourselves, but respect other people too. Mina uma ngiphuma la ngihlangana nomuntu engingamazi ngiyambingelela. Okay? There's nothing wrong in saying sawubona. It's not just a matter of ngiyakubona, I acknowledge your presence. But a lot of you young people here really don't seem to understand that until you extend yourself to that extent, you are alienating yourself from a large population, and you're confirming the worst aspect about it. It costs you nothing but a lot of happiness to acknowledge another person. Let me try and be as current as I possibly can, okay? Our governance structures and institutions are not going to take you guys anywhere, okay? And nation building really requires long-term objectives and clear vision of what is it you want, okay? Like we've been doing a lot of patchwork, bandaging and whatnot, and it won't work, okay? All the indexes that are used to determine the life of a country are negative and they're getting worse. Angikhulumi nje from my own mouth without thinking. In the sequel that I'm writing, I talk about the World Bank report of 2015, in which the people there actually outline all the indexes and the poverty that we see and the unemployment and whatnot and the crime and so on. They go and compare the biggest slum in Gujarat, in Mumbai, Davari, to Deep Sloot. That slum is doing much better. Not that they accept the slum in India, but it's doing much better than what is happening in Deep Sloot. And they take Deep Sloot and they disaggregate in Katazos as a Deep Sloot and says this is typical of what's happened throughout the country, okay? And the conclusion is that they say they do not understand how something that was built over 350 years, this is segregation and apartheid, could be allowed to exist and generate these kinds of situations where Amalogish are dense like hell. Amalogish now have informal settlements. Amalogish aneenkathazo zingapheli. And yet we say we're a free nation. It's a joke. It's not a funny joke. I really say that's where you guys come in. Now, some younger people are getting together and they are calling for a national dialogue. Okay? The younger people should be involved in that kind of dialogue. But they have to have a very bold vision. Ukuthi bafuna izwe elinjani. Okay? Don't follow this very sophisticated presentation yabo president bethu nabanye who are talking about the national dialogue. Ayiyindawo. Okay? Bahlulekile, 34 years, you should have built something by now. Okay? Now, if you're going to wait for another 34 years, someone is going to take this country over. And you will be back to black workers and white supervisors. Get educated, period.
Wonderful. Thanks, Prof.
I'm not dismissing you, Mtana Sekaya, because if you see the number of universities that I had to go through with in the United States, I navigated my way because education I knew would be the savior. Fundani. Rendani imibuzo yakho miningi. Kodwa they characterize izikhalo zabantu abaningi. Okay? And I will not be able to answer zonke lezo zinto. All I can point out to you is 2 or 3 things that will help guide you. Lezi zama political party nokuthi bavota kanjani nokuthi asizwani nokuthi siyaxabana, they have a lot of reasons behind them. Uthola isikhundla ngoba uyimember ye-party. Okay? Uthola umsebenzi ngoba uyimember ye-party ethile and so on. Lezo zinto lezo are most unfortunate. It's not a question of how capable are you or you merit to have that. This is the question the Vice-Chancellor was raising. At what point do you say to yourself, no, I'm not qualified. I'm falling and so on. So let's come back. Lemfundo oitolai. In it, make sure that you really delve deep into the history of your country and how other countries were built. You will find, no, everyone here has an ability to contribute something in this edifice called nation building. Tina, Laikaya, we never really did that. And I'll sum it up because somebody said it nicely. Former President Kgalema put it bluntly. He said, I noticed we went and took over where the apartheid regime left off, but we changed nothing. You know, I'm not thinking about legacies, okay? This is my contribution, which I'm sharing with you. Just as I had promised to Vice-Chancellor, nalo munye ohambile uMarwala. Uthi cha sizofika thina sizotshela intsha ukuthi sahamba kanjani. Hopefully, uma nibheka lezo incwadi, you have to read though, okay? Ayukulaleli insumansumane and these endless narratives that you're exposed to on television and on the cell phones. It's pathetic. Ngoba iqiniso alikho kahle lapho. Fundani. Okay? And then you will begin to see that I have no legacy. You know, I just feel that I want to drop dead after having contributed something to the nation building of our country. Sharing my experiences with you is the best I can do. Okay? Ukuthi bekezelani, bhekani ukuthi ngibekezele kangakanani ngiphelela kuphi, ngaze ngafundisa nabelungu. You shouldn't laugh at that one because unkosikazi Greek American wayefundisa Harlem, efundisa abantu. Mina ngangifundise abelungu. Uma sesibuye ekhaya sizokhuluma about our experiences, they were absolutely hilarious. Abantu bamnyama did not have problems no mom. But abelungu nami, ukhuluma ubona ukuthi akalalele, even at graduate levels. Bese ngithi kube, is it because you're wondering ukuthi lemfene late dilike kanjani ukuzofundisa wena? And then uyobabheka phansi. So there's no legacy, it's just sharing the experience. These kinds of books take some time to write, okay? I just did not wake up one day and decide to write the book. But what I do remember very clearly is 2014 in December, the Mandela Institute for Development Studies has a conference. They call it a high-level conference because there'll be 4 or 5 former heads of states, Nabantu Babo, and a few academics invited. So I get invited as an academic. Utabo Lapo, Basanjo Lapo, Masire Ulapo, Mpaka is chairing the meeting, Uchisano is sitting on my right, and so on. I made a mistake before the meeting started. I see a lady organizing things and she has a name Kichuru on it. Ngitugo, Kichuru, do you remember James Kichuru? Uti no. No. Uti umazelapu James Kichuru. No, it's when I passed through Kenya in 61. She says, but you know, this is 2015. I'm not related to Kichuru. What were you doing in Kenya? Me with my big mouth in Yamjel. Uti Gimi, I'm going to ask you to kick off the session that deals with Pan-Africanism, where the heads of state will be talking, right? Nempela, I start explaining my journey from Johannesburg, etc., etc., etc. Chisano on my right and somebody on my left, this is 2015. Why don't you write a story about your experiences? That's when I began to realize, oh, if the story resonates with people like these, I should begin to write it. That's when I got real traction. Layers Billy, I get traction from the first one. People like him are encouraging me. People like Vickers, who has looked at this and made sure it gets published and rates it as a good book, all those people are contributing to my offloading my own experiences and so on. So I'm looking forward to another session like this sometime next year when the sequel comes out.
A warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. The book is available free of charge as an e-book on the UJ Press website. You can download it as a PDF. You can download it in different formats. It's the same words, same everything. So nobody should leave feeling, discriminated or anything of that sort. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our discussion. I have no doubt that this discussion will not end here. There will be many other opportunities to discuss the book amongst yourselves, with Prof, and so on. And Prof, I can assure you, we are looking forward to the sequel to this book next year, and we'll meet at this place. We'll organize. If we are publishing, and I hope it will be published with UJ Press, Vickers will keep me in the loop. As soon as I get a copy, I'll be the first to say, Prof, we are ready for you. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of an applause. Let's thank Prof. What is left of me is to thank you, Prof, for having set time aside to come and engage with us. So thank you so much. It means a lot to us.
Can I also thank you,
Yes,
really,
yes,
from the bottom of my heart, Ntate Mpedi,
Yes,
and all of you for making the time to come and share these experiences. Yeah. I mean it. It's not just iBioscope, okay? Iqiniso, sikhulumile, savumelana. I wish you guys a hell of a lot of luck. Remember, you are an important investment.
Definitely. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon in person, and those that joined us online. Tea is served, ladies and gentlemen, till we meet again next month in the same venue. Be on the lookout for the communication about the date and time. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.